Welcome to part 9 of the entire plot of the Tandem Read by Sarah J. Maas. Today we're going to be covering chapters 27 through 31 of Tower of Dawn, and then chapter 30 of Empire of Storms. We have a lot to cover today, but of course first I do feel like I owe y'all a very quick explanation. I know I have been gone for a hot minute. Yes, I do plan on finishing the series by the end of 2025. Obviously, anything can happen, so I'm not writing that in stone, but I would really like to finish the entirety of the entire plots of Throne of Glass by the end of the year. That being said, you are going to be seeing a lot of these episodes coming up very soon, absolutely flooding my feed, so let's hope I can keep up with the posting schedule. I originally took a pause to move. As you could tell, my surroundings do look a tad bit different. I did try to keep them as similar as possible to the old setup to not throw you guys off too much. I am going to be living here for a couple months, and although I initially thought I was only going to take a week or two off after moving, I ended up taking a whole month because I got one of the worst illnesses that I have gotten in a really long time, and I was just not able to get in front of a camera or even read a book. I was really struggling to read at all during the last couple weeks. So here we finally are. I am feeling myself, and I am excited to jump into part 9. Also, I am on a bouncy exercise ball, so if you see me bouncing here and there, I'm really sorry about that. I will try not to bounce whatsoever, but you know, it might happen if I get really excited because some crazy stuff happens in these upcoming chapters. Alright, so let's start with Tower of Dawn chapter 27. This is going to be in Yreen's POV after healing 6 people. Remember, things got a little awkward and uncomfortable with her and Kale, so she decided to go on a big old healing binge, if you will, after she found out that he was angry and treating her the way he was because he just found out that Nesrin had left with only leaving a tiny note. So she heals until sunset when she decides to come back to the castle because she decides that she's going to confront Kale. So Kale does not know that she knows why he was being rude, and she has kind of come to terms with the fact that he's allowed to be upset, but he's not allowed to disrespect me like that. So she is going to confront him on it. But as she's walking through the halls at night, she hears footsteps behind her. She realizes it's probably just a servant. She picks up her pace and starts going to Kale's room when she realizes the footsteps behind her are also picking up pace. She turns a corner and she can see Kale's door in the distance, and she just decides to be better safe than sorry and break out into a full sprint for Kale's rooms. But unfortunately for her, the footsteps that she hears behind her have also now broken out into a sprint. So she decides she is not going to look back and see what's chasing her. She is just going to make it her life's mission to get to Kale's door and get to safety. She does beat whatever or whoever is following her to Kale's rooms. She immediately goes in and slams the door, and she locks the door right before a body slams into it on the other side. Kale is obviously very startled and confused as to why Yreen just ran into his room in an absolute frenzy and why now it seems like there's someone trying to break into his room on the other side of the door. But he doesn't ask questions. He immediately starts instructing Yreen to push his chest and some other heavy furniture in front of the door. Mind you, he would love to help her, but paralyzed from the waist down kind of makes that hard, so he's instructing her the best way to barricade the room. We have briefly discussed the layout of Kale's room, and remember there's like this glass door that leads to this garden, and it's not like a private garden to Kale. It's private for like multiple rooms, but you can access the garden from a couple different areas, and there's really only just a glass door there, so not very secure. So he's also then instructing Yreen on how to properly cover up that glass door so no one can get in through the gardens either. After all of the doors are secured, Kale hands Yreen daggers, and he coaches her on how to stay calm and just stay ready. But he also says that if the thing gets into the room, he will fight it, and he just wants her to run. The daggers are really just for her protection, because also remember, she took a do no harm vow, and so she actually cannot injure or unalive another human being because it goes against the vow that she took to Silba as a healer. Mind you, this entire time, the thing has been beating on the door, the front door, not the glass door, and it's beating on this door so hard that the wood is now splinting and there's a giant crack in the door. And then through the crack of the door, they hear a non-human voice. Lovely. They hear a non-human voice calling out Yreen's name. She obviously starts to freak out when Kale says, "Don't you waste one heartbeat being afraid of a coward who haunts women in the darkness. Your fear grants its power over you." I don't feel like I need to add anything to that. That was beautifully said, Kale. But also notice when he says that your fear grants it power over you, this is kind of Kale nodding to the fact that he does in fact believe that this is a Valg creature. So they're waiting for this thing to basically throw its body into the door one more time, and with the giant crack in the door, it's pretty much one more body slam away from falling down, but they don't actually hear anything. After the creature says Urine's name, it kind of just vanishes. The next thing they actually hear is the palace guards yelling in the distance as they're running up to the door. And the craziest part is when they let the guards inside, they say that no one was standing outside of Kale's rooms when they got there. Tower of Dawn, chapter 28. So Caution came with the guards to Kale's rooms, and he is helping Urine push all the furniture back in its place as Kale is explaining to the guards and Caution what exactly happened, and Urine is sharing the bit where only she was there as well. Caution immediately orders multiple guards to be sanctioned around Kale's rooms, and he also says that he would like to personally escort Urine back to the tour tonight. However, she says that she would rather stay with Kale. That's crazy. I know Caution did not like that. Caution definitely did not like that. So Kale tells Urine that she can sleep in Nesrin's room if she wants, since it's just one room over, but she says that she would prefer really to just stay in his room. She can just sleep on the floor or the couch, but she just doesn't want to be alone right now, which is so valid. Of course, however, he is a gentleman and he will not let her sleep on the floor or couch, so I guess they will just have to share the bed. So unfortunate, truly. However, they're both still kind of like in a tizzy of everything that happened and they can't sleep, so they pretty much just stay up really late into the night talking. While they're talking, Urine reveals that she would not have ran if that thing had gotten in the room, even if Kale was distracting it. She would not have run because she does not want someone that she cares for to be killed again, which is very tender and very sweet. She's just a really tender, sweet-hearted human being. That's really what Urine is, so it makes perfect sense. She then decides to take this opportunity to, in a more loving way. I mean, when she was originally coming to the room, she was going to tell him this in an angerful way, in an angry way, but decides that she's just going to say, like, hey, I heard that Nesrin went off with Sartok and only left you a note, and I'm really sorry that happened. I'm sure that must not be easy for you. And Kale tells her what that little note said. I know you've been dying to know what the note said. It said, I hold you to no promises, and I will hold none of my own. That's crazy. I mean, here's the thing. When she agreed to come with him to Antica, he promised her the adventure of a lifetime. However, he's pretty much been stuck up in his room working on healing, or he's been going to visit Urine to get his healing done. And pretty much his focus has just been on healing and getting help for the kingdom, which are definitely like the priorities he should have had, but he has not taken the time to see her family or get to know her family. He has not taken the time to explore or do anything with her or celebrate any of the holidays with her, really. So, like, it makes sense. I think it was just like they both had to accept a very painful truth. And Nesrin just happened to be the one who had to relay that truth in a very not easy to accept way, unfortunately. Kale just tells Urine, I promised her an adventure. She deserves to go on one. And eventually, after that conversation, they get quiet and they both fall asleep. As for the next morning, Kale decides to go to the barracks and finds the guard Shen with the prosthetic arm. So remember, Shen is the guard that Urine healed, and seeing Shen really inspired Kale to see like what he could be despite his newfound disability. So Shen shows Kale to this kind of like a fitness gym area in the barracks, and for the first time Kale asks to work out in the space and maybe learn some stuff from Shen. So Shen is happy to train Kale and they end up being workout buddies together, and I just think that's really sweet. And something that Kale really needed right now is like a friend who understood him. Like, obviously Nesrin is his friend, but we can tell here and there she has said some insensitive things because she just doesn't understand. She doesn't have a disability. She's not had a disability, and it doesn't seem like she's really been close friends with anyone who has had a disability. So it makes sense that she doesn't really know how to talk to Kale or be there for him in the way that he really needs, especially because he's not doing a great job communicating it. But I think it's going to be really, really beneficial for Kale to have a friend who just gets him like that. So they do do their fun workouts together. Shen shows him how to do some workouts in the chair, kind of like what Yureen taught him, but maybe some more fun and advanced ones. And then also Shen spars with him, trying to get Kale used to sword fighting while in the wheelchair. Then he goes back to his rooms for Yureen to work on healing him for 6 straight hours, and so this pattern continued for the next 3 days. I think that is a lovely spot to leave Tower of Dawn just for one chapter. We're going to jump over to Empire of Storms, chapter 30, and we're going to catch up with Alide and Lorcan. They are working with the performing troupe. I will remind you, just in case you forgot, they're a part of the circus now. Empire of Storms is really dark in a lot of ways, and this is just kind of like a funny side plot to kind of lighten the mood a bit of the book, but it honestly just feels a little hysterical talking about it. But anyways, let's catch up with Alide and Lorcan as they are working with their circus troupe. So luckily, they have a women's wagon and a men's wagon for sleeping quarters because Alide does not want to share a tent with Lorcan. He still kind of freaks her out. Remember, he was hunting her for a period of time and he still never really told her why. So she's like, I don't really want to share a tent with this man. So thankfully, because of all the bad weather, instead of setting up tents, they've just been sleeping in the 2 wagons and have had a women's wagon and a men's wagon. So they have been so far spared. However, throughout the day while they're working, Lorcan has been asking more and more about the experiments that were taking place in the dungeons at Morath, but she doesn't really want to tell him everything in case he leaves when he knows everything he feels like he needs to know, because she still kind of needs his help. He reminds her that their bargain was he would get her to the bridge if she answered his questions about Morath, but Alide, tricky girl, she reminds him that she never actually specified when she would answer his questions. And Lorcan does not like that, so he just keeps asking questions until she answers some. He actually asks a question about why Alide wants to find Queen Aelin so bad. And based on the sass and the attitude and the way he just spits out Aelin Galathinius' name, Alide clocks that Lorcan not only knows her personally, but has some beef with the queen. So she takes a mental note of that, and then she asks him, and he gives some half-truths. He doesn't really tell her everything. What he does say, however, is that Selena Sardathian is in the service of Aelin Galathinius, so if she finds one, she'll find the other. I'm annoyed that Lorcan just hasn't straight up told her that they're literally the same person. However, it is kind of funny that she is searching for both of these people. It is nice of him, though, to at least not make her try to prioritize who she's searching for. And now she can just be like, oh yeah, just find one and you'll find them both. So like, he doesn't do her a disservice, but honestly, someone put this girl out of her misery and just tell her the truth, like the full truth. So they were off a bit from the rest of the troop when they were asking each other questions and stuff, and they decide to head back to the camp, but they have decided that the ground is dry enough now that they don't need to sleep in wagons, and they're going to set up tents. So unfortunately for Alide and Lorcan, they are now going to have to share a tent tonight, so they're not very excited about that. Lorcan goes to sleep on the floor and offers Alide the actual roll, and she of course doesn't fight him on it. She's like, okay, fine, I'll take the bed. But that night, Lorcan, out of curiosity, because he can't sleep, and apparently neither can she, he asks her what happened to her ankle. And she immediately gets really cagey and doesn't share anything. Of course, we know this is because she has a lot of trauma around what she experienced, not only in her childhood, but at Morath. But she doesn't tell him anything. She's not ready to have that conversation with someone that she barely knows and doesn't really trust. So he just decides he's going to get up and take a bath since he can't sleep. However, when he is outside of the tent, he can hear with his Fey hearing that she lifted up her bedroll to hide something under the bed. So he knows that she has something that she is hiding. So Lorcan decides he is upset. He doesn't want to be sharing a tent with this girl, but then on top of that, she's hiding things from him. She played him with their bargain. And on top of that, he just doesn't want to be in the circus, and he definitely doesn't want to pretend to be this human girl's husband. So he is outside of the tent sulking. And he just starts to mentally spiral to us as the readers. And what's really stinking funny here is we find out that he's really spiraling about Rowan. So it turns out the real reason that he truly hates Aelin Ashriver Galathinius with every fiber of his being is because in his mind, she stole Rowan from him. Rowan being his truest friend, Rowan being the only other Fae that he felt like ever truly could challenge his ability. Like, Rowan was maybe not as strong as Lorcan, but Rowan gave Lorcan a challenge. And although it seems like they fight all the time, like, you never would have guessed that they were best friends. Lorcan's not really a normal guy. He's kind of angry, sulky, tough, woe is me kind of Fae warrior guy. So it kind of makes sense that he has just bullied and hated on someone that he's considered his best friend. I wonder if Rowan knows that, though. That's the thing. Lorcan comes back, then Elide goes to take a bath, and then when she comes back, I guess she had a moment where she really thought like it wouldn't hurt to tell Lorcan a little bit about her ankle, so she tells him the truth. She says that her uncle is the head commander at Morath. She basically just lets him know that if Lorcan gets too close to her, or if her uncle Vernon thinks Lorcan is close to her, he will take him alive and make him one of his fancy experiments. And then, of course, Elide shares with Lorcan the experiment he wanted to try on her right before Manon rescued her, and how Manon rescuing her and them running into a different experiment, aka Kaltain, is what led to the explosion. Lorcan, after taking a minute to soak all this in, because it was definitely not what he was expecting, asks her if she would like him to kill her uncle. Elide just asks if there would be a cost. Lorcan doesn't really answer, he just follows up and asks if her uncle is also responsible for what happened to her ankle, to which Elide responds, "When you kill my uncle, ask him yourself." We are going to jump back to Tower of Dawn for chapter 29, but this is also officially part 2 of the Tower of Dawn book. It's just called Mountains and Seas, and this is where I will say Tower of Dawn goes beyond just being Kale's healing story and Yrene being introduced as a character. Like, we're about to delve into a whole additional plot with Nesrin and Sartok that is honestly going to blow the series out of the water. So I'm really excited to finally get into this part. We're going to be in Nesrin's POV as they are taking the final leg of their journey. Nesrin takes the opportunity alone with Sartok to ask if he's ever fighted in a war, to which he says yes, but definitely not one of the level of the war that's about to happen. He then asks about Aderlin, and the topic quickly shifts to rumors he heard of racism and hatred towards the immigrants there, and he's asking about her experience having been the child of immigrants. Nesrin just confirms that she was definitely a target of hatred during her time there, and Sartok doesn't push the topic, but he just lets her know that he understands. They chit-chat a little bit more about some other stuff, but eventually they do arrive, and he warns her that he's just the captain here, so no Your Highness and no other royal titles while he's there. She's surprised, and definitely like, you know, like if you're calling someone Your Highness and you see them as like the prince of a country that like your family's from, it's gonna be hard to just speak to him casually, like, you know, like another peer, but you know, he's asked her to do it and he said it would make him more comfortable, so that's exactly what she's gonna attempt to do. So they are landing at the camp and she's honestly just shocked at how big it is, and not only that it's as large as it is, but that it's only one of many clans. So you can imagine how helpful it would be to have all of these clans helping out in the war. He gives her a short tour from the skies as they are landing, and then when they do finally land, they're met by a woman named Bort. Bort is Sartok's Hearth sister and heir to the Hearth Mother Holun. Okay, that's a lot. The Hearth Mother, the best way I can describe it is she's literally just the mother of the entire clan. Like, she oversees the needs and the care of everyone in the entire clan. So the Hearth sister is just the heir to the Hearth Mother, so that if Holun ever passed, then Bort would then become the Hearth Mother. It's pretty simple. She's just, you know, she's the big dog. She calls all the shots, and she's obviously very well loved and respected by Sartok and the rest of the clan. Bort's first question is whether Nesrin is an emissary or a bride, which, Let's just say that gets both of them blushing a lot, but Sartok just scolds her. Nesrin's really just shocked of the way that Bort so casually, like, teases Sartok, but then she realizes technically Bort kind of outranks Sartok in the clan. He's a captain, but she's the Hearth sister. And you'll definitely pick up that they have very much, like, bickering sibling vibes, but they do love each other dearly. Nearby Bort, there is another man who is clearly not from the southern continent, but he comes up and he greets both Nesrin and Sartok and says that he is a guest to the Hearth Mother these past couple weeks. He introduces himself as Falcon Enar. He is a merchant from the northern continent. He has no news from Adarlan, however, because he has been in the southern continent for 2 years now. Because obviously the first thing Nesrin wanted to ask is what the state of Adarlan was like, since he is from the northern continent. But unfortunately, he knows less than she does. He realizes that she introduced herself as captain, and he asks what happened to the Captain Westfall now that she has his title, and she reveals that he's actually right hand to King Dorian. Falcon is shocked. He didn't even know that Dorian had taken up his place as king. He didn't know what had happened to the king. He obviously has so many questions because he clearly missed a ton, and obviously, like, we read about a lot of things that happened over the past 2 years, so yes, he did miss a ton, but Bort just escorts them to their rooms being like, okay, yeah, now's not the time. They're obviously very tired from traveling, so let's give them a minute before we start interrogating them about the last 2 years of their lives. As Nesrin's being shown her rooms, she asks what Falcon's business in there, but no one but Haloon, the Hearth Mother, knows. Bort doesn't even really know what Falcon's doing there, but she is skeptical, so it's a good thing to know. Later that night, after bathing and changing and recovering from all of that travel, she's scarfing down some dinner when Sartok says the Hearth Mother is not at the camp. This is horrible because Nesrin did not want to be here long. They were already planning to be here for like 3 or so weeks. So she's really not wanting to just hang around and wait. But Sartok does say she should be back in a day or two. So that just gives them some time to look around, but they definitely can be back in about 3 weeks. They agree to do a much more in-depth tour of the camp tomorrow and even visit the archery practicing spot in the camp because he just knows that some of the people in his clan would absolutely love to see the Neith's arrow in action. Remember, Neith is the goddess of archery, and that is what she is known as in the southern continent. Chapter 30, it is the next morning, so Sartok and Nesrin are meeting up to Mount Kadara and start off on today's lovely adventures. They fly around for a little bit to let Kadara stretch her wings, they stop to get her some breakfast, and then Nesrin asks a bit more about ruck riding culture. So basically, here's it in a nutshell. Young ruck riders learn to ride on the old, more like retired rucks when they're about 4 years old, and then when they're 13 years old, they get to pick a hatchling and train it from birth. So all riders are very well bonded with the rucks. This is also where he takes the time to share a little bit more about the history of the Cognate conquering the southern continent and taking over. Basically, she grew up hearing these stories, but not in this detail and not from as trustworthy as a source as the prince himself. While he's telling her a little bit about this history, he mentioned something called the Sold. I really do struggle with some of the words in Tower of Dawn because I really don't want to mispronounce them. But basically, it is like a staff-like thing, but it has horsehair attached to it. Basically, the OG Kagane, if you will, the first one, he had a white Sould. He had a white one that he held during times of peace, and then he had a black Sould that he wielded during war as a weapon. And that's not like the most important thing in the world, but it is kind of a fun little Easter egg that we can delve into a little bit more later, so just know what a Sould is. Conversation then turns to a less desirable conqueror than the Cognate, and that is Erewhon. And like Lysandra questioned earlier in Queen of Shadows, they're basically wondering why, if Erewhon was silently ruling Adarlan, why now? Like, why did he wait until after both Aelin and Dorian have stepped into their power to try to start conquering the world? But, however, they're not really able to dive into that question before they land back on camp. And It's kind of crazy that I feel like that has come up 3 different times yet, and then we just move on really quickly without getting an answer. I would really like an answer to that question. I have a feeling you would too. Anyways, so we have completely moved on from wondering about that, I guess, and we're officially doing our tour of the camp. And she is meeting a lot of amazing people, and she's amazed by all of the training rings and all of the exciting things that she's seeing around the camp. And obviously, all of this is happening up in the mountains, and she's really just shocked about how amazing the view is. She's really just loving her time here at the camp. As she's looking off in the distance, she can see a large lake, but past this lake, she can see a mountain that looks devoid of life and unlike the rest of the view. Sartok says that that specific peak is called Arundan, and it's where they bury the rucks and their riders who have passed. Nesrin then asks him a very risky question. She asks if he would prefer to be buried there with the ruck riders, or if he would prefer to be buried with his family. And he refuses to answer, which, if you think about it, is kind of answer enough. There's only one answer to that question that would be not wise for him to give. So that says a lot, I think, about Sartok and how he feels about potentially becoming an heir. They then move on to where people practice their archery. So they're in the specific archer training area of the camp. I don't know if there's like a better name for that, but Bort shows Nesrin where they keep all the bows and arrows, and of course Neith's arrow goes crazy on all of the targets and kind of assembles a bit of a crowd. Bort even herself comes up to Nesrin and she's like, I need you to teach me how to shoot like that because my archery skills are lacking compared to yours. So after hours of shooting and showing the Rook Riders a lot of her techniques and how she shoots, a messenger eventually does come and tells them that the Hearth Mother is back a day earlier than expected. So Sartok and Nesrin waste no time to run to see Haloon. Thankfully, for me, and for you, I guess, so you don't have to hear me butcher the name Haloon, we learn that they call her Ej for short, like EJ, Ej. It's the Rookin term for mother. So Ej is just like, Hearth Mother is like her official title, but Ej is like a more casual, endearing term for mother. So there you go. That's why they call her Ej. So when they come to meet Ej, Falcon is also in the room. She says, an ancient malice is stirring in these mountains. It's why I've been gone these past days, to seek it out. So basically, we learned that something or someone has been attacking Rook nests and killing baby Rooks in their eggs. Ej reveals that they've been attacked by Karankui, which is basically the translation for Stygian spiders. Tower of Dawn, chapter 31. Do you guys remember the Stygian spiders? Okay, they're these big, giant black spiders that are horrifying. They're the size of horses. They can talk. That is where Manon got the silk, the spider silk that she needed to help Abraxos fly. Okay? I hope you remember. If you do not remember that from Heir of Fire, I'm going to need you to remember that scene because it's going to be really important in this chapter, okay? We're going to refer back to it a couple times. Okay, I need to stop bouncing on the exercise ball because I'm excited. So Nesrin asks Ej if she's absolutely sure because after all, Stygian spiders are supposed to be very rare. However, Falcon pulls spider silk out of his pocket. 100 yards of it, actually. Okay, now, let's remember what happened in Heir of Fire. Manon came there right after someone else, who had made quite the deal. A merchant, actually, like Falcon, from the northern continent, like Falcon, who wanted 100 yards of spider silk, like Falcon. Are you guys picking up what I'm putting down? The same merchant who traded 20 years off his life for 100 yards of spider silk. So Falcon, this man who is here, this is the exact person that the Stygian spider told Manon about. So although Falcon looks 47, we learn in this moment that Falcon is actually 27. So the Karankui, aka what the people of the southern continent call Stygian spiders, they are a less civilized version of their northern sisters. Okay, so remember how disgusting and brutal and terrifying they were in Heir of Fire? Now imagine 100 times worse, and that is the Karankui. Ej says, I do not believe it a mere coincidence that the Karankui have again begun preying upon the world. At the same time, a merchant seeks out their eyrie for answers regarding their northern kin. Basically an accusation towards Falcon, but he says he regrets giving up his youth and he just wanted to ask for it back. I don't think that's going to go well for him. But he learned also that he could have the years back if he slayed the spider that he made the deal with. So although he's not a warrior, he was hoping to come here and find someone at the clan who would be willing to hunt down the Stygian spider, or the Karankui, that he made the deal with and kill them so that he can be young again. Edge reveals that Rux and Karankui have actually waged war against each other in the past, which is why Edge really does not want this news to get out. So it is going to stay within this group in the room. However, Sartok and Nesrin are about to talk with Edge about some way deeper stuff that goes further than just this Karankui. So Falcon is dismissed from the room. So now it is just Edge and Nesrin and Sartok. So Edge turns to Nesrin and says, "It is starting anew, isn't it? The one who sleeps has awoken." I'm sorry. So is everyone who needed to know that Erewhon was actually asleep and not dead the only people who didn't know that he was asleep and not dead? I feel like this is the second time now that we're hearing from someone who just had this knowledge that he was actually just asleep and not dead. So love that for us. Everyone knew he was taking a magically induced nap, I guess, other than the people who actually needed to destroy him. So cool. Besides the point, Sartok tells her about the attack that happened in the Tor library, and he asks if Edge can have a clan fly across the sea to fight Erewhon in this war. She then decides that she needs to tell them a story. After all, the Hearth Mother, on top of caring for everyone in the clan, she is supposed to be like the storyteller. Think historian, okay? Like, yes, she tells story, but she's not just telling these crazy myths, although she does know the myths because sometimes there is truth hidden in myths, okay? But she knows about all the previous wars, okay? So this is the kind of storyteller she is. She's basically the one keeping the clan informed of their history because those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. However, Edge is hungry, so Edge says she needs to eat first, and then she will tell them. So, flash forward, Edge has eaten her dinner, and she's going to tell us what she knows. Now, I have gotten majority of this from the book. It is not word for word. I've really just included the big stuff that you need to know, but we're going to read a good bit, so bear with me. This is a lot of really important information, and then we will, of course, recap everything after. Wait, I need a sip of water. Long ago, before the Cognate, before the horse lords on the steeps and the Tor by the sea, before any mortal ruled these lands, a rip appeared in the world. In these very mountains, aka a word gate, okay? It opened and closed swiftly, no more than a flash of lightning. But that was all that was needed for the horrors to enter, the Karankui and other beasts of shadow. In other words, Valg creatures. Nesrin clocks this immediately, and she confirms out loud to the rest of the group. She's like, "So you're telling me this is where the Valg came into the world?" And Edge confirms. She then says, "Most of the Valg left, summoned northward when more hordes appeared there. But this place, perhaps, the Valg that arrived here were a vanguard who assessed this land and did not find that they were seeking, so they moved out. But the Karankui remained in the mountain passes, servants to a dark crown Erewhon. They did not leave. The spiders learned the tongues of men as they ate the fools stupid enough to venture into their barren realm. Some who made it out claimed they remained because the fells reminded them of their own blasted worlds. Others said the spiders lingered to guard the way back to wait for that door to open again to go home." Interesting. War waged in the east in the ancient Fey realms, 3 demon kings against a Fey queen and her armies. Interesting. Demons that passed through a door between worlds to conquer our own. And yet, even when the Valg were banished to their realm, even when the final remaining demon king slithered into the dark places of the world to hide, the Fey came here to the mountains. They taught the Rooks to fight the Karankui, taught the Rux the language of Fey and men. They built watchtowers along these mountains, erected warning beacons throughout the land. Were they a distant guard against the Karankui? Or were the Fae too like the spiders, waiting for the rip in the world to open again? By the time anyone thought to ask why, they had left those watchtowers and faded into memory. So Sartok is like, okay, so this is clearly the Valg, this is clearly the Word Gates, this is clearly the Valg Kings, so how exactly can we defeat these Valg? And Ej then points to Nesrin and says, she already knows. Okay, this is awkward because Nesrin has kind of been withholding information from Sartok, and that's not happening anymore. Nesrin is speechless, but basically eventually just says, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you what I know. If it gets back to Erewhon that they know and they have a way, then they're all dead. Like, Erewhon's gonna be able to just squash them right then and there. Sartok is clearly and obviously very mad at Nesrin for withholding this information, but there's still just so much they don't know that could make all the difference in the world. So she's like, it's not that you need to know what I know and that I'm keeping it from you and this was all for nothing. She's like, there's still so much more we need to know, and we only know one way, to kill them. So we need more. We need more information. We need more help. And what have we already learned from what Ej has told us? The Stygian spiders are Valg, and they are still here in the mountain area. Okay, so they have outposts here, and Nesrin thinks that everything still might be connected, and maybe if we explore in the right places, we could figure out some more information and potentially expose a witness. Ej then says most of the Fae watchtowers are gone, but some still stand in partial ruin. The closest is perhaps half a day's ride from here. Begin there and see if anything remains. Perhaps you might find an answer or two. The Fae set them with traps to keep the spiders at bay, which is why no one has thought to look before now. When they abandoned the towers, they left them intact. Some tried to enter to loot or to learn, none returned. So is it worth the risk? And of course, Nesrin is not afraid to take some risks. So that is in fact going to be Nesrin and Sartok's next adventure, which we will talk about in part 10. Thank you for joining me for this episode. And thank you for your patience, as it took me about a month to release the next episode. I swear I'm going to be back on a normal schedule, so hopefully I'll get the next one out to you very soon. I will see you for part 10, where we're going to be going over Empire of Storms chapters 31 through 33 and Tower of Dawn chapters 32 through 35. If you are not caught up, then you definitely need to, and of course you should subscribe so you get notified whenever I post the next episode of the entire plot.